Hey everyone, this episode is with Svein Tuft. If there was one person that actually lived up to the term legend in cycling, it's Svein. In the first half of this podcast, we cover cycling, but in the second half, I pulled up some stories from his new book, We Will Never Be Here Again, and they're insane. I've known Svein for 10 years and heard bits of the stories all this time from him and others that have known him. And after reading his book and hearing the real version of these stories, the version I heard were the tame version. The real story was way more nuts, so I hope you love these. Swain's amazing, and he was my biggest mentor and close friend, so I hope you love learning from him, and I can't recommend his book, We Will Never Be Here Again, enough. It's incredible, and nothing but gold. It's one insane story after the next. Of course, there's all the cycling stories, but also, if you love mountaineering or the other mountain sports, you just like being out in the mountains and want to hear the crazy stories from those years of his life, they're insane and so entertaining. As always, if you like the podcast, please share it. That's the only ask. Enjoy Svein Tuft. Sveino?
Yeah. How's this?
Okay. Yes, finally. Okay. I don't know what, dude, I've done so many podcasts. I never have issues with
Yeah.
that platform. I don't know what the hell that is.
That's strange
Okay.
because this is perfect.
Yeah, really. Okay. Okay. Now, the third or
Nothing
fourth
like
try.
dropping $200 on another fucking platform though, hey?
Yeah, I know, right? I'm just like, oh, fuck, whatever. Just, hey, go. Let's do this. I
Yeah.
just want to have a chat with Swain. I haven't talked to you forever. Okay. Do you want to just move your camera just so it looks more at your face?
More pro.
Like, yeah, well, that's fine. Just so it's not like looking up your nose. That's all.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, cool.
How's that?
Oh, yeah, we're perfect. Okay, everything's
Right
good.
on.
We're recording. Good. All
Good.
right, man. The question I asked you, what do you think about moving back to Canada?
Yeah, it's been you know, it's a long story there, but like it's one of those things when we were in Europe all those years, living in Andorra, we had a great setup. We had our house, my son was born there. And you just the whole time in your head, you're like, yeah, but we're Canadians and we'll probably go back to Canada. Our families are there. And when you're away for so long, you kind of, yeah, you miss, or you think you're missing out on all that stuff. And meanwhile, you're kind of building a life in Europe and enjoying, what Europe is and what it has to offer. And, there's a lot of things you could say this and that about Europe or whatever. But I think the greatest part about it is just like the accessibility of so many amazing things and like how easy it is to do, all the things that we love, right? Would I say the skiing's as awesome? Not really, but there's a lot of like, it's a different type of skiing and there's like a different accessibility that I enjoy there in Europe as well, right? That to really capitalize on and then just obviously the biking and being able to bike all year round, like, man, I don't know. That's something I really miss, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, for us, it just, it was a weird thing because when we moved back from Andorra and when I was done racing, it was never part of the plan. We'd always planned to stay for a bunch of years and kind of and really just see kind of flush out what our lives could be there in Europe, Andorra. I was starting a business there and then the COVID came around and it just became apparent that international travel and things like this weren't going to be a thing, And we're just like we came to that decision like, yeah, I guess now's the time to head her back to Canada and yeah, start a life there. And yeah, that was a big ordeal, like I have so many stories tied up into that whole move and ending up where we did because we had no plans to really end up here. It was really just kind of starting life anew again. And um, now that we are here, obviously I love where we live. Like it's awesome. It's wild. It's everything I kind of love. But I think of my wife who really came to love living in Europe and myself. Like, yeah, we miss a lot of those things. So it's really And that's the tricky part is you have kids and you start the roots start going in deeper and deeper where you are. And we talk about it all the time how it would be great to just pick up and leave and kind of, you know, in so many ways, like this life in North America, it's so much about chasing all this shit that you don't really need.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I feel like it's just like we were brought up in North America, right, with that mindset of like, oh, you got to get a house, get property, acquire things, and kids follow this kind of program, right? And I don't think that's the way. I mean, for a lot of people who haven't like they haven't stepped out of those boundaries, it is just what you do. But I think that, that's one of the hard things about, or the tricky things I would say about that life we've lived before and you have lived. You're kind of like a nomad and you tend to like minimize things because you can't be hauling shit around all the time. And I miss that. I miss that. There's a freedom to that that is it's hard to beat. Being able to just pick up and go somewhere new and check out a new zone. And I think of my kids, like our job as parents is to expose them to as many new interesting things as possible in their life, so they can form their own kind of ideas and that. So yeah, that's why it's such a loaded question for me because I really do love it here. I think Canada's changed a lot too. That's the other crazy part is, I think of what we grew up with. I'm much older than you. What I grew up with, things are very different here, right? And in all those years racing, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in Canada. I was just blindly like, oh yeah, Canada's the best country in the world.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe like it's like beauty wise and so many things it is. But there's a lot of things that shifted in that time of being away that, for myself, I'm not such a fan of, right? And it's not to say that Europe is amazing for those same things, but I would say the values and kind of the lifestyle or what people tend to put their value in, it's better in my mind in Europe, right? Like it is a wild life over there too, but I have a feeling that and just what I saw is that people tend to value like family time and time doing real things as more important than acquiring the next thing or buying the next thing because you're working so much and so hard that the only thing that makes you happy is to buy stuff. And I think that's a sad life. So yeah, man, big question.
Dude, I'm so happy with your answer because you answered that question the exact same way I would answer it and in the same priorities. Like, again, it sounds like a silly thing, but just like all the stuff I love doing, skiing, biking, trail running, all that stuff, it's so easy here. I'd
Yeah.
like two-wheel drive car. I can drive to the bottom of the mountain, my flip-flops. There's no snow chains. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Like my buddies come out to visit and we go and do like a trip here, and we're used to having like 30-liter packs with all the
Yeah.
gear, and like just getting to the bottom of the trailhead and like just
Yeah.
blowing out your truck is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
mission in its own. And
Yeah.
here we're just laughing. It's like it's a playground. Like you have a credit card and they'll do everything for you here. Right?
There's a beauty to both things. They are both great. And
Yes.
like that is exactly right. So funny. Yeah, you need a fanny pack and you can drive up to 2,000 meters and access the high country just like that, right? And have like a wicked day in a totally different zone. Whereas here you got to bushwhack through alders for 6 hours just to get to somewhere where you can see what the hell's around you. So yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah, totally. And hey, I love the wilderness and like just those wild trips. But the thing is, you need a whole day to do that.
Yeah.
Like I can
Yeah.
just go rip up and go for a ski tour real quick, like nice and easy every day, every morning. Come
Yeah.
back, have breakfast, be good. I don't need to make this a whole mission for it. And then for sure you miss like, yeah, the wilderness and whatnot. Or the funny one that cracks me is like my friends here that they'll make fun of me for like, oh, you don't do skimo, you just go up and down the pist and whatnot. It's like, yeah, well, I'm just trying to get a workout in and whatnot. And they're like, you need
Yeah.
to go into the wilderness. And I'm like, what do you know about the wilderness? You don't have wilderness in Austria. Like, come with me to Canada where we grew up and like you almost die for some of
Yeah,
this
when
stuff.
when there's a cafe halfway down, I don't consider that wilderness.
Yeah, 10
So,
kilometers off pist.
yeah, exactly.
Oh man. But then okay, like how did you find like the years after retiring and stuff? Like you go your whole life having these goals and objectives and like like for the challenges and like you need something to like push with or like to go for. Like, how have you found it with
Oh,
like having projects and whatnot to
yeah.
like go for, to not just be stuck in the mundane checking
Yeah.
boxes life, like having something to
What a
push for?
what a question. I mean, yeah, still working on that. And, I think again, it's something people don't talk a lot about or, it's kind of that thing of like if athletes do bring it up, it's like, oh yeah, it's I think what happens is a lot of times guys jump right into something. Again, like for a lot of guys, they'll maybe be a director or they have something lined up. Um, or some sort of business deal or something where they just jump from one fire into the other, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, if you have something lined up. But I think there is a kind of moment where you have to pull yourself from that life and kind of reflect on who you are and kind of really because as you know, Jack, when you're chasing after it, there's not a lot of time for reflection on who you are and like what makes you happy. Like you get kind of caught up in this thing that becomes a bit of a machine, right? Where you're just blinders on. I look at all the young guys now and I know it's different for everyone, but I just see like more than ever, it's just straightforward, man. And you're in it. And I think you really need to have a moment because I talk to people about this, who've been through it or either been through it for a long time or just getting into it, and everyone has a different way. But I would say for myself, I wanted to give some time because I had a feeling there was something there that I had to just respect the years of kind of habitual thinking. What's the word, like this kind of razor focus on a simple objective, which is a beautiful thing. It's probably the thing I miss the most about that life. I don't miss racing or traveling or any of that stuff. It's the singular focus of just having one job, try to be faster on a bike. It's like doesn't get much better. And it's a beautiful life if you can enjoy that. Um, but when you step out of it, you are I would say kind of lost, for it in so many ways. You don't have this there will be nothing that matches that thing, that all-consuming thing. And I really realized that right away, but I was I think some people retire with a resentment to the sport or resentment to the actual tool, or just the day-to-day exercise or riding or whatever. And I still love it. Like what I always loved was just exploring and having that time to go out and cruise around in the mountains and see new things, right? And so it was weird because almost right away I took some time away from it, and then right away I was coming back to it. I missed everything about just that, yeah, that exploration, right? And where I ended up, it's pretty wild country. The Kootenays in British Columbia. There's just so much, and so I found myself right back in it, and then finding like a different love of what it was, and so ultimately, I haven't really changed a lot, which I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, I've grown in different ways, but I guess the point is like I think I'm pretty basic in the fact that I just love moving in the mountains and it doesn't really matter to me anymore, like yeah, I like to go fast. I like to go as fast as I can because that is a big part of it. Okay, yeah, I like to see new areas and new ranges and find some new trail or some new zone. But ultimately, I like moving fast in the mountains, and that is enough to keep me content. That like fills my cup. And and then in the meantime, I got to figure out how to juggle all the other things, raising a family. So trying to balance that stuff, and make a living and raise kids, it's a lot, and I've learned a lot in that time. Um, But I'd say at the foundation, I still need to do these things because it's truly the only thing um, on a daily basis that keeps me sane or makes me feel content about life or, yeah, just puts a smile on my face, you know? And I quite often wonder what people who don't have those things, like, how they exist, because I know for me, it's everything. So, yeah, that might sound kinda crazy, but I know it doesn't to you, but maybe to others who maybe haven't gone as deep into it or whatever,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's such a big part of life, I think.
That's awesome, man. And there's a lot of like when people talk about like guys have the blinders on and go, 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 you have this goal and whatnot that you're pushing for. And when people talk about that a lot, it's like that it's normally framed in like a negative way. And the way that I
Yeah.
look at it is like, yeah, sure, there's all of that stuff. But the one thing that like I take from that is, man, if you have a goal, something you want to work that hard for and go for, it like the person you become by the end of it, like your standards for what hard work, discipline, focus, all that kind of stuff is like, man, the real world is kindergarten. Like you will never
Mhm.
suffer like you do
Yeah.
get what you have to do there. And then the hard part is just finding something new to apply it to. And the reason I ask like the question about like getting away from that and then like having goals and stuff like that after, I mean, I don't have the answer here, but like one thing that's been helping me a lot with that is just thinking about like, okay, what is like a perfect day? Like like
Mhm.
what actually makes me happy is like the perfect day. It's like wake up early, having like feeling like well awake, like I got a decent night's sleep, cup of coffee, work my face off on stuff that I really enjoy doing, exercise with or without friends, like out in the mountain, like outside in the mountains, that kind of stuff, have dinner with friends, and just arrive at the end of the day completely exhausted. And like that is a perfect and like exhausted from spending all day working my face off on stuff that I love doing and some time with like people that I really like, whether that's having dinner with them or whatever. And I like just tried to string as many of those days in a row as possible doing that. And then I look at it, I'm like, there is no way to improve this day. Like that was
Wow.
perfect. I don't need, and I was just thinking, like, it started to dawn on me. It's like when I was a kid, you start thinking like, oh, I'd love to have like a crazy sports car or something like that. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
like if I did, it would probably just sit in the garage because I'd rather be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like if I,
Well, I
sure,
think
I love cars and whatnot, but like I actually enjoy doing this stuff more. Like this makes it more fun to me. It'd probably just sit there most of the time. I don't think I'd actually use it once I got
you
it.
know, it's such a great point because all kind of things of status or, fancy stuff, it becomes less and less interesting, right? If maybe that drove you at one point. I know for myself, it was never a big thing, but I like cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. Um, but I find like the more and more you live like that, the more it's just about the tools that become interesting. So like I will invest in good tools because
Yeah,
that's what you use every day. But I don't want stuff that is a waste, or
yeah,
like just to have, it's just less and less interesting because it's just that's exactly it. It just sits there, right?
yeah. And like building on that, what's kind of funny is like earlier in the podcast, like years ago when I was doing the podcast, I had this one question I'd like always ask guys, like, if you had 10 grand to spend on like fun, a toy, what would you spend it on? And here's the thing, I don't actually find that question as interesting anymore because
Yeah.
I was always asking the question when I didn't have a penny laying around. And so there was all this stuff where I was just like, man, all these things, like I'd write like a list on my phone of like, man,
Yeah.
like dream things I want to buy. And I found that list now and I'm like, well, I could actually get all of those things, and I don't even want it anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
now
so
that once you
interesting,
can
isn't
get
it?
it, you're just like, "I don't even want it." So I'm like, "Oh, well, I already kinda
Well,
got everything I need. I don't
I
need
think you
anything more."
start to realize how, it's just what you think, right? It's like so many people think that winning the lottery would just be amazing and they would just have this great life. And it's like, no, you're still you. So if you
Yeah,
don't change the habits and patterns that make you you, if you're not content now, you're not going to be content. Like you'll just blow through the money on a bunch of stupid crap and then end up with nothing and be miserable again. So it's just like, it's just that thing of being a human, right? It's
yeah,
pretty natural, and I think the whole evolution of life is to kinda figure that out. Figure out what you're figuring out right there. You know what it is you want in a life, so, anything else is a bonus, like through your work and being successful in what you're doing, that's great, right? But it's not the thing that drives you or that is gonna make you happy. It's the actual real things, and I think we're similar there. It's just like moving in the mountains and then the people you can have an impact on, like I'm
Yeah.
getting my boy into ski touring now. I've got like this little like yeah, I mean he's young, right? But like it's just these little baby steps, like so if I can instill that in him, like I know that's a gift for life, right? And that's yeah. So anyways, there's a lot to go into there, but I think yeah, you're spot on.
Well, I can't wait to hear the ski touring stories. I've already heard the
Mhm.
stories of you taking them bike packing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
School of Hard Knocks. I love it. But on like the money thing, the one thing I will say where it did like help a lot is just the peace of mind and like being able to buy your freedom, like
Yeah.
having the freedom to do. Because I had so many shitty jobs, and I know you had way worse. And you had, but like when you don't have to do the shitty jobs, and when you can sleep at night because you're like, okay, like I'm okay. I'm not like just working my face off to stay above water. That was the nicest part of it. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Taking that stress off is huge. Yeah, that's a big
yeah,
weight to be carrying around for sure.
yeah. And then like going back to the question of like moving on after pro cycling and stuff like that, do you ever feel like because yeah, for sure you still love pushing and going fast and having challenges and if you want to do a race or something like that and it's not like just to have the thrill to push yourself. Do you ever struggle with like the pressure of like either other people expecting you to be like the best version of the best athlete of Swain Tuft that they've ever like some people I think they just think you snap your fingers and it's like
Uh,
dude, do you have any idea how much I had to sacrifice and how hard I had to work to be at this peak level? And if I sit on my butt for 2 weeks, it's gone. And like, and then it's like
yeah.
every time you show up at a start line, it's like you're expected to be the super freak athlete for that. Or
Yeah.
like, and even if it's not come from other people, does it still like weigh on your head as far as you're trying to compare yourself
Oh,
to the best
yeah.
athlete you've ever been?
I think if we don't have that, we wouldn't be doing the things that we do, right? So I always say like ego is this kind of necessary evil, right? Like it's this thing that like so people are like, oh, ego is the worst, right? Because it does this and that. And it's like, yeah, it's like you know, anything that's being abused is it's not the right energy. And I guess my point here is like with ego, you need it to do things, or else you just will not push yourself or try hard at anything. You won't get up and do anything. But you need to keep ego in check. I think anyone who's an athlete has a certain amount of ego, right? And it becomes part of your identity. And no matter how chill you are, or like whatever, it's like you're not there lining up at a race because you just don't care and you're just laid back, cool guy. You're there because you have something to prove, whether it's to yourself or others or however however it works in your brain, right? And for sure I have built up like my identity over all these years. And that's another big part of like something you need to learn to understand and then kind of deal with as you move out of the sport. And I will say, yeah, like that is a thing. Like there's that pressure I have on myself to just perform at a way that, maybe isn't realistic as much anymore. Like I'm 48 years old. And I would say even up until like the last year, I like I mean, I still like do some intervals here and there, like when I'm building up. And that's crazy, but it's like something I enjoy to do to kind of because I also believe you need to keep testing yourself and kind of putting yourself to the sword a bit because I think it's really easy as you get older to be like, oh, that's not for me, or that's not who I am anymore. And it's like, well, it's easy to do that with so many things because then you just keep letting go until you find yourself in a position where you're not happy, right? And the easiness of letting go is so easy, and the work to get back there is so hard, especially as you're older, right? When you're young, you can kind of just like boost yourself back into form, and it gets older when you're in your 50s and things like this, right? I mean, harder. And so yeah, it's this weird dichotomy of like, yeah, I'll still do like this bike packing thing, and I just have this idea in my head of like what I need to uh, a pace or a power that I need to adhere to, right? And man, it's crazy to still think like that. But I also know like I won't change. That is who I am. And Is that a bad thing? I think, yeah, if you keep it in check and you understand it and you kind of accept that's who you are, and it's like you said, it takes quite a lot of work to kind of maintain that level. But I also believe, like, what else is there? Um, it's such a big thing for me that I love so much. So, I feel like in so many things, like there's this idea, like especially in North America, it's like, oh, when I retire, it's gonna be so amazing, and I can sit back and just do all, like, have this much. And you look at, like, the suicide rates of people who retire and have nothing left in their life and no objective and no goal to chase after. It's not a good picture here, right? So my point is like, we don't stop until we die. And this has been such a big part of my life. And I know it's similar for you, that I won't stop. Like, and people can tell me all of the things like, oh, you should back off because of this age. And, like if you just think of like cardiovascular stuff, it's like there's these, like, there's, what is it, the U-shaped curve of like too much and all these things. It's like, yeah, I get it, but it's such a driver of my life that it's it's where I get a lot of satisfaction from. And so, yeah, I do have that weird pressure on myself, um, even at this age. But I just feel like as soon as you start to give up on these things, where do you draw the line? You don't. It just keeps getting more comfortable, more soft, and more like, just it, like I said, giving up. And that's not, to me, that's not an option. So, I'd be curious to hear where you stand with that, because you took on some big challenges, and I feel like, the evolution of life and the way people think, it's always more, and what can you do better, and and then now, like every time, if you're going to go do something, what it took for you to get to that level. So it's not like Jack just shows up and puts another minute into so and so's time or whatever, right? It doesn't just happen, like, because you just stay fit. No, it
Yeah.
takes like a shitload of shitload of work
Yeah.
and dedication to get to that point, right? So, like, what's your take on it?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And like, so your point as far as like that you just keep pushing like all the way, it's like I completely get that because like this is something that's just been not cracking me, but I've just found it funny for like the last 3 months or the last 4 months or whatever. Like people see me, doing whatever I'm doing in training and stuff like that. And I post it more because so many people message me saying how motivating it is for them. Like I never
Yeah,
got a kick out of really like that's why I never post anything on Strap because like I don't really get much from like a kudos or whatever. Like it's always just been my thing that like I
yeah,
do it for me. And that's a big reason why I don't post it on Strava because like I just want my sport to be for me. I don't want to feel like I'm getting judged on the one thing that's
on
just
every
supposed to be
ride.
for me. Yeah. And so, but I share it because it's like it's fun and like other people find it motivating. I'm like, awesome. Hey, if that helps you, great. But for the last however many months, people see me doing like whatever these hard training rides and stuff like that. And they're like, what are you training for? And I've always said the joke as far as like, I don't know what I'm training for, but I'll be ready when I figure it out. And it's like, and they think I'm totally joking, but like, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this for like the sake of like my future, but I'm just like, that's real. Like,
Yeah,
I really love training. I love working with Steve and like the training he gives. Okay, to be totally fair, I freaking love Steve. And the one thing, if I ever got a world tour contract, the only thing I'd want in that contract is he can still be my coach. But I swear
mhm,
the 9 hour time change saves our relationship once a week because he'll give me like I'll want to do like 3 hours of just like endurance something like that. And I wake up and I got 5 hours with intervals the whole time, and I'm like, God damn it, why am I training like UAE right now? Like I gotta work, man, as well for this. And then I'm just like I just bite my tongue and I do it, and I'm just like, hey man, you said you want to be the best athlete you can be until you're let's say 35 or so, and then we'll
mhm,
make a decision after that. He's doing his job and he's making
yeah,
sure that you do get the best of yourself and you are going better. So like bite your tongue, do the work. If you want to complain the next morning, you can do it. And every time I get back and I'm just like, okay, fine. It was like good workout, whatever.
yeah.
But that's a side point there. The things
But
like
to
if,
just add to that quickly, sorry, that is the work that's required. And there's
yeah,
something that could be said about your life now, is you could easily just go, yeah, but I don't need to. Right?
yeah,
When you're on UAE, it's like, yeah, that's what I have to do. or
Yeah.
else, or else, or else, right? But like you could easily just go, yeah, I'll just I got time for 2 hours today. But no, you go and do the work, and that's part of the commitment you both made to each other, right? And that's why it works. That's why it's so important to adhere to commitments, right? Anyways, that's just a add on there.
No, totally. And here's the other thing with that. My entire life, no one has ever had to push me. It like whatever it was, like I would always push harder. Like if the coach gave me 5 hours, I'd do 7, but I'd only show him 6. That way I wouldn't
Yeah,
get in trouble for 2 extra hours. Like that's what I did my whole life. There. Steve is the first person in my life who pushes me harder than I want to go. And the big reason behind that is because I do have this other stuff in my life, right? Like it's
yeah,
not only training that you're focused on. And if I wanted to sort of give advice to like the guys in their 20s or their teenage years, their 20s, whatever, on like a really cool thing that I've learned that's changed for me is when I was, let's say, in my 20s or whatnot, all you know is your sports. The only thing you want to do, you just want to push for that. There's nothing else. Like, I just want this. Every other, like, people tell me to have balance. I don't want that because this is the only thing I want to be doing. And the it's a double-edged sword because the downside to that is when you make your sport the only thing you want to do, when it's not going well, you feel all that pressure and it's
yeah.
hard.
It's the worst.
But yeah, the upside to it is the sacrifices are not so small because what I look at it now, as far as like, there's this other stuff I also love doing. And I have to eat into that in order to do more of the training. So now there is other stuff and you have more balance, but now you really make the sacrifices for it. And so the advice I would give to those guys is like, yeah, sure, you can feel like, man, I have nothing if I don't have my sport, but at least you're not really making sacrifices. Like I look back on the years, like I wasn't like sacrifices, sure, going training when it's cold or like when you're tired. That's
Yeah,
not a sacrifice. You're not
no,
taking that's you want to do that. Like,
yeah,
okay, suck it up, like you can get through it. It's not a real sacrifice. And now when I look at it as far as like, okay, do I want to try to go even faster on something like break some other KOMs or all this other stuff? I'm like, you really weigh up as far as like, dude, you lived like a freaking lunatic to train
mhm,
that hard to do it. Like, you know what that took to build up to that. And there's a lot of other stuff that needs to get pushed to the side. And like,
uh,
you become a very unbalanced person. It's like you cut out all this other stuff to do it. And that's the part that weighs on your head when people think you can just snap your fingers and like, yeah, just show up and just do it. And
oh yeah. People
mate.
think you're out just biking around for fun, and then you show up, and it's just because you're talent or whatever. You just go
Yeah.
and rip up the side of the mountain and do world tour times. It's like, wow, that's world tour level. I'm sorry, like you don't just get there by riding your bike around, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And going back, one thing, you said, and I think, like, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this because 'cause we've kind of danced around it a bit, but, like, I always found this notion of, like, professional cyclists, I'll hear 'em, and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, the sacrifices and the discipline and all this stuff," and I get it, like, you definitely do trade, uh, your life for it, but it's like, why are you there then? Like, my thing is like I really enjoyed that part of my life. I didn't ever see it as there was times what I found the sacrifice actually was like taking some shitty whaling flight, on a beautiful day to go up to friggin' like to leave my beautiful area and go up to whatever, some janky hotel outside of Ghent to hang out in a hotel and rot away for 2 days before some psycho classics race.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I hear that a lot, like, "Oh, the sacrifice," and I get it, but at the same time, it's like, you gotta love this, right? So, I don't know, I didn't see it as a sacrifice. I saw it as this thing that I could do to make the rest of my life awesome, and, there was a lot of stuff you traded, like you said. I had so much, I wanted to ski, when the odd time it would snow like crazy in the Pyrenees, I wanted to go skiing. But instead you're like, well, I'm a professional bike rider. I better go and do my job. And that's not a sacrifice, right? Like that's not oh, woe is me, the rest of the world that's, starving is just like, oh, but that poor guy, he had to go ride for 5 hours that day in the sun, when it was snowing and then he wanted to ski. Can you imagine the hardships? Come on, that's bullshit. So I
Yeah.
don't know, like I know you've evolved in, where you started and where you are now. And so it'd be interesting to hear your perspective.
Hey guys, if you like the podcast and just want way more podcasts or personal help, maybe check out School for Cyclists because it's free to try for the first 30 days. There's over 100 hours of extra exclusive podcasts in there you can listen to just like this, and I'm on for an hour every day if you want more personal help from me. In school, I'll teach you everything I know and you can listen just like these podcasts or get one-on-one help every day if you want more. If you're self-coached, need some more motivation from being around others who train really hard and just see what they're doing every day, or you're a coach who loves to learn more, everything is inside School for Cyclists. If you're curious, sign up just to test it out for 30 days and see what's inside. And if it's not for you, it won't cost you anything and you just got lots more good stuff and one-on-one help for free for a month. No stress, no risk. If you're curious and want to test it out, go to howtobecomeaprocyclist.com and check out School for Cyclists. Okay, back to the episode.
Yeah. So I agree there, man. I never thought it was a sacrifice. All the years I was going after it. The only thing that where it started to get to me in the last couple of years where I thought it was a sacrifice was the risk and the danger for
Yeah.
it. When you're taking
Yeah.
hits to the head and like when you've had a couple bad crashes and you've literally seen friends die in races or like
Mm.
end up in a wheelchair or a coma and you're like,
Yeah.
hold on a second here, guys. Like that pole doesn't move when you hit it at 80K an hour in the rain. You can't see. And like that was because like okay, you know what? Honestly, like for the sacrifices thing, then you were actually the number one person that got it through to me why I didn't think it was a sacrifice. Because the number one lesson I learned from you in all the years, like we've been friends for 10 years now at this point, like 2016 is when you first sent me that email, is the number one thing I took from you was the whole we will never be here again. And this is you have an opportunity in your life where everything is about you. You have no responsibilities yet. I just saw it as an adventure. Like there was the end goal that I'm trying to get to. And there was for sure the ego thing. Like I set these standards. Like this is a thing that I wrestle with a lot now. Was I set the standards when I started as far as like World Tour, Olympics, Tour de France. I have to check those boxes. And honestly, a big reason why I just kept pushing for so long was because I felt like I couldn't live with myself if I didn't reach those because I would have always felt like I never lived up to my potential.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm having to like work through in my head now a lot with that. But other than that, it was like, this is an adventure. Like, what do I have to lose? I don't have car payments to make every month. I don't have a
Yeah.
mortgage. Like, I don't have a wife and kids. Like, it's like everything's about me. It's an
It'll
adventure.
never be
Like,
easier, you know?
yeah. And
Yeah.
like, you should go for it, man. And I always just looked at it as far as like, okay, what am I going to quit at 26 and go get a job? Like, in any other career, what's the difference between starting at 26 and 30? And I
Yeah.
always just wanted to finish with like the peace of mind that like there was nothing more I could have done because I
Yeah.
knew that would haunt me for the rest of my life if I was just like, oh, you should have hung on another 6 months or something
Yeah.
like that. But the
Well, I
only
think
sacrifice I ever thought was the safety one. When it started to be like,
Yeah.
hey, man, you don't want to be 40 years old with brain damage
Yeah.
here. Like, easy.
No, I totally agree with that, and that was one of the big things, you know, at the end for me, I was just looking at guys doing stupid shit all day long, and I was like, "Oh, you're not for this sport anymore, like, this is a sacrifice, you being here." Um, and then, what was the other one you just said prior to that? I lost my train of thought there. Uh, yeah, I think it was just along the lines of being young, you never, um, you know, I always say like that phase of life, it's all about pushing and seeing what you can do. And I think that too many guys, you see them, they come over to Europe for whatever, their half a year, they blow out. And I always just say, man, you were just starting, you know, that was just like the baby step. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you really wanted this, and that's why, like, I'm always stoked when you see guys that push and find their way, right? And no matter what it is, if they love the sport that much, they figure it out, right? But I saw so many guys that had these good opportunities, and if it just wasn't perfect or things didn't fall in line perfectly, you know, they left. And I just think, for me, it was more like, oh, the rest of your life, you're always going to be going like, man, should I have just stuck it out another year? You know, even on a smaller team in a worse situation, to just see if I could have done something. And that's like,
Yeah.
I always say, like in life, you never want to go through having regrets about things. I always try. I mean, that's never, you know, going to be the case. There's going to be things that happen in life, of course, but I always try and live a life where you don't have regrets. You do things in the nature that you don't regret, right? For the rest of your life. Oh, this or that. So Yeah, I think that's a good perspective, Jack.
Yeah. And to build on your point there, that I would say is like going to Europe for 1 year, that's not trying. That's
No.
taking a chance.
Yeah.
Trying is getting
Yeah.
back on the plane and going for a second year once you've
Yeah.
actually seen what you're getting into. Like the
Yeah.
trying is not trying. It's an opportunity and you're taking a chance. But
Yeah.
trying is going back, because look, you ask every single pro that comes from North America to Europe, find me one pro that said their first year in Europe was awesome. It's
Gravy.
horrible
Yeah.
for
Just easy.
everybody.
Yeah.
No one. Like, it doesn't matter how much of a contract you have and the nice apartment you have. You're breaking rules you don't know existed. Everything is different here. You have no
Yeah.
friends. You do
Yeah.
your training and that's it. Like,
The
it's not fun
racing
for anybody.
compared to what you knew is fucked. Like it's just a whole other it's a whole other game, you know? I always think back to, your situation there in Austria, living in the barn and, getting paid nothing, but you're there again, right? You go
Yeah.
back to that and it's part of it is because and I say this to all young riders, like you gotta love the training and the adventure of it. I think back to my Symmetrics years, that Canadian team I was on. We'd go down to South America. It wasn't like now I look back and I'm like, that was fucked. Like the fact that we didn't like people weren't massively hurt or died or whatever. There was so much dumb shit that happened there that was unnecessary, but it's just how things roll down there, right? But at the time we just thought that was awesome. We thought that was great. It was an adventure. You're with all of your best buddies traveling down in some crazy fucking place in Brazil or Mexico or Colombia, and crazy shit's happening all around you, and you're just living life, and it was fun. So like, this idea again, I find it really sad that like the way the world tour is kind of going because it's just, in my opinion, it's kind of losing its character. You have to be such a machine, and it's such a structure to get there, right? Like I think the days are gone. You and I have always said, and I think I might have said it to you a long time ago. It's like age doesn't matter when you can win bike races.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's even shifting, right? It's like you're kind of written off and they're only looking at these young talents, right? And anyways, I'm kind of taking us away from, we've gone a lot of tangents here, but that's just something that I just feel like at the core of it, you want to love this thing so much that it's not this huge sacrifice and takes so much discipline and energy to just do the day-to-day stuff, right? It has to be so awesome in your mind that it's getting up every day is exciting, and I remember that, man. I would have some crazy route planned and the night before I'd be prepping things, checking the bike, checking my bags, kit wise and all that. Like for me, that's the exciting part of it, right? It's kind of why I love bike packing so much because yeah, I love the thing. I love the adventure. I love the route, all that stuff, but it's the logistics and the planning that goes into it, right? And yeah, I think that's got to be kind of at the core of it. And when I look at guys who treat cycling like a gym, right? Like where it's like I lived in Andorra, guys would ride down, do the same climb, bang, like whatever, do their intervals, come home. And it's just like riding was a gym. And I never saw it like that. It's like, okay, I've got intervals to do, but I'm going to do this like sweet loop, and make it
Mhm.
at least interesting, right? I'm not saying I'm special or that I'm different. It's just that it has to be fun, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know if I totally agree on all of that, because like what I would say is like it just comes down to the motivation for like whatever, because for some guys it is really motivating just to see the checkbox on their training plan
Yeah,
every day to
sure.
execute it
Yeah,
perfectly. If that's motivating for you and that's going to get you to go the hardest, hey, awesome, go for that.
true.
You like
Yeah.
the adventure stuff more. The part that like really does sort of crack me on it, where I just like I can't understand why this works, is going back to the age point of it. Because
Mm,
like if, for example, like I would never do this, but if I was ever hired by a World Tour team to like be a staff member on the team, I think the number one area I could help out with there, or that I would want to change, is around scouting. Because
mhm.
like it's gotten so young now at this point where it's like if you're not racing by the time you're 14, good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
And the point that like the part that where I just can't understand this is like I refer to it as far as like bolt on speed, because if you're looking at two guys, and let's say a guy starts cycling when he's 22 years old, and in all metrics of the athlete side of it, this is the better athlete. But now let's say fast forward a couple of years, he's racing and stuff like that. He's 26, and you're looking at him versus a 19-year-old kid who's living at home and living like a World Tour pro already. And you instantly look at the birth certificate more than the stopwatch, and it's like, man, you take this 19-year-old kid, what are we going to do here to make him better? Like the
Yeah.
potential, okay, I agree. He probably has some potential here, but the potential you're looking at there is just with age, because he's already living in an altitude tent. He already has a nutritionist. The fridge refills itself. Like everything is perfect. Like if you give him a contract, okay, there's more money in his bank account, but there's not really anything to optimize here. Versus look
Yeah.
at this 26-year-old guy who has nothing. Like look at how much faster you could make him overnight.
Mike Woods coming off of whatever, Amora Vida, right? It's like he's been in the
Yeah.
jankiest setup with no help, with crappy equipment. Give him the right stuff, and it's like, oh, he's one of the world's best
Boom.
at climbing, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's such a great point, and I think it's like all things in life. It's like this pendulum, right? And for like everyone, you know, UAE and Sky sign a bunch of young guys with these crazy like contracts at 16 and 18 or whatever, you know, just to kind of hold them. And then everyone's like, well, that's it. They just scrap any kind of talent search for, you know, like these older generations. There's some gems in there that I'm sure have been just gone by the wayside, right? And like you said, they're rough. They haven't been living with the one percenters. I try and mentor some younger athletes, and I look at what they're doing already at the age of like 14, 15, and I'm just like, hey, this either works out great like Wout van Aert, or you blow out at 18 because you're so sick of all the shit you've been doing already for the last 6 years, right?
Mhm.
And they're told, they're like, that's the worst part is like, I see some kids, they just love it. They think it's the greatest thing. They're loving every minute of it. That's great. Good on them. It's like you said, whatever the motivation is, I don't care. As long as you're happy and you're stoked on doing it, that's great. But then I see others that are like, you can tell it's like already taxing them. And it's like, that part of life is not meant to be taxing and like hard and sacrificing, right? It's like, it should be fun and not that, you know?
Totally. And just to build on like the scouting thing, because I've thought about this so much for it. It's like if you're the top 3 to 5 World Tour teams, you're one of the best, biggest budget 5 teams in the world. Okay, fine. They can do that where they
Yeah.
can just sign the best riders because the junior world champion is going to want to go to UAE,
Yeah.
Visma, Red Bull, whatever. They're going to want to go there. But where I think there would be a really good change is if you're not one of those biggest teams, I think they should be dedicating a higher percentage of their budget towards scouting to hire more scouts to look deeper into riders
Yeah.
and not just look at date of birth pro cycling stats. Because the reality is, if you guys go and sign even if you get lucky and you sign the 18-year-old freak who's, as soon as he's good enough, he's leaving and going to the best team ever. Versus
Yeah.
if you find the 25-year-old guy and you can make him better overnight, you get all of that potential right away just by
Yeah.
giving him the basics right there. That's what
You
I
know
think.
what, man, I think it'd be awesome. Like if you could ever get that role or just even do like it is about shifting the mindset though, right? Because the teams are only going to do it if they believe in that project. And the unfortunate side of like, you know, my career, seeing how teams function and operate is they're like riders, they're mercenaries. So when you're a mercenary, you don't have a lot of time to think about yourself or think about anything else but yourself, right? And how to survive. And when you're in survival mode, you're not creative and you don't think outside of the box. You don't have time to, right? It's like a family who's struggling to pay the bills. They're not thinking about politics or where the place to travel to broaden their kids' minds, right? It's just survival and going forward, and we're under stress, right? And no one works well in that situation, so they're not thinking like you. Now that you've kind of, when you are able to step out and look at the whole thing, you're like, well, this is stupid, right? And so what I'm saying about cycling and what I saw is so many teams, they're simpletons. They're in the sense that they're doing all this advanced stuff. But let's just take example in my era, Sky came along, right? At the time, Sky was just like, whoa, no one knew what they were doing. it turns out like now that we find out later, like all the things, it was nothing crazy advanced, right? Like they definitely pushed the 1% and like the aero and the equipment and the dietary stuff, and it formed the sport a lot. But what I saw is every team, every other team that didn't have those resources was just none of this stuff was rocket science. It's out there if you were willing to like search and explore and go through delve through the internet. You could find a lot of this research and studies on a lot of this stuff. And meanwhile, everyone was just copying everything they saw from Sky. There was no independent thought. And that was always the thing that cracked me so much about being in professional cycling. Because it's like, we'll never evolve because all we do is jump from one thing to the next. And, I would watch sports scientists and I work with great sports scientists. I was very fortunate to work with some great people. But what I saw is that, and I had those discussions with them, I'm like, all you guys do really is kind of sell the next big thing, right?
Mhm.
And you don't have like, as long as you have everyone buy in and believe, right? There's power in that, right? I can show you this arrow booty and just be like, man, this puts like 10 watts on your TT position. And a young guy who's just like concerned about results and going fast, he's just gonna be like, oh, sweet. And it like that, that placebo power is amazing, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I feel like, what I saw over the years. And I'd be curious to see, like, because you've worked with teams, you've been in the team environment, you've been in these training camps with some pretty proper teams. Would you say that's changed at all? Because, that's been my experience over that era of my career, which was, or like 2000s into 2019, right? It was a big span, and I didn't see it changing much.
Yeah, and the short answer is no, and that's why I'd wanna keep working with Steve, because
Yeah.
honestly, for me, like, if the World Tour contract came tomorrow, like, what's more important to me than having the UCI World Tour logo on my chest is, like, I just wanna be the best athlete I can be for these next couple years. I realize at a certain point, I'm gonna start slowing down, and I just wanna get every drop out of me there, and that's why I wanna work with Steve, because the reality is, it's like, I've talked to how many different coaches for this. I've been at these training camps and stuff, and you get the workouts and stuff, and I'm not saying it's bad training or anything, but it all looks very much so the same. I've seen,
Yeah.
and then I talked to Steve, and he's like, everybody in the World Tour that I've seen for like coaches and stuff like that, it's all pretty similar. It's
Yeah.
really basically, and then I look at what Steve's doing, and he's like way off over here doing this thing. And at the beginning, it was freaking cracking me because I'm
Yeah.
like, what the hell are we doing, man,
Yeah.
for this? And I'm like, the thing that like he still doesn't believe me on, and I'm like, man, Ed, I've been at how many different training camps with these guys, and we get the training, the next day's ride planned out the night before. We get like a file, like showing us all the stuff for it and all the intervals and whatnot. I'm like, dude, I have never gotten. What's up, Heidi? How are you? Yeah, I've never gotten from any of those teams. I have never gotten one workout from them that is as much structure as you give me for every single workout I have to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like for like the 21-year-old kid that's like hyper focused on like wants to do every little marginal gain, Steve's their dream because he'll give you every
Right.
detail for like this cadence
Yeah.
and this speed and at this power at this and I get yelled at all the time for being 10 watts outside of this zone. And I'm like, hey man, come on, like you're cracking me here a bit. But
Yeah.
that's his job, and that's why it works so well because he goes through every workout I do with a
Yeah.
needle looking at every little thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's the game changer right there. That's why I'd keep working with him because
Right.
he is doing stuff different. Or like he was giving me the sprint workout. I mean, all pretty much all the workouts he gives me are completely different from anything I've done. But like one, he was just explaining it like we're gonna do hockey starts where you're only allowed to do like 6 pedal strokes or something like that. I'm like, that
Right.
makes sense. I remember doing this from hockey, but nobody's thinking like that
Yeah.
from the other workouts I've seen, and it works really well.
Well, that again, that goes to that commitment, right? Okay, Heidi, I'm doing a podcast there, okay? Um, that just goes to that commitment thing again, right? So you've agreed, and that's what keeps a guy accountable, right? Like the people that I work with as coaches, again, like I was a pretty individual thinker, but like I'd agreed, I worked with Mark Quad for many years. Quaddy was great. And when you make that commitment, you go and you do it because like you are in that agreement together, right? And that's why I think coaching is really important. We both know, like definitely Steve does some special stuff. There's no question about it. I really like his style and his approach because it's very different. Like you said, very different than what I was used to. But at the end of the day, coaching is like, man, there's so much stuff you can find on the internet if you just wanted to build your program, like with bloody AI and all this stuff. Like, do you really need a coach is a question nowadays, right? And it's kind of becoming more and more apparently true. But I think the biggest one is that human connection of someone who understands what it is you're trying to do and that kind of day-to-day connection of like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and someone else is checking in on me who actually cares about my progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is, right? Because it's just like we discussed before, you're not at a stage where you have a lot to prove to anyone. You have a life. You've got your gig, you got what you're doing. You enjoy sports, but and of course you probably love giving her and going fast up a mountain and doing races and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you could build your own program. Would it
Yeah.
make you the best? I don't know. Maybe not. If Jack's left to his own devices, does that always work out? You know, just like myself, if I just did what I wanted to do, you know, especially as you change as you get older, right? You don't recover in the same fashion, especially when you're doing many other things, right? So yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing, you know, that whole coaching athlete thing. And I think, you know, AI will never um it will never take over the job of someone like Steve or
Mm-hmm.
like some of the best coaches or sports scientists that I work with. Or even think of like I coach people and I always think like, man, the really special thing is the fact that like when they're going through a rough time, you have that chat and you've been there and you can kind of completely change and alter their perspective and mood over that whatever that couple day period where things went sideways, right? AI can't do that, right?
Yeah.
It's never been there. It doesn't understand that. It just has the hard data and logic.
Mm-hmm.
And humans aren't that. It's just like
Yeah.
it's like the young junior, right? It's like, yeah, great that you can go and smash it, but you haven't learned anything else, right? And so if you don't come into this thing with a more rounded view of life and balance, it's gonna be, I don't know. Yeah. I hate saying like things like that, black and white, because I'm always proven wrong, right? It's like I used to say like these guys who would eat nothing would still have these amazing performances, right? You've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, could they have been a million times better? Probably through eating, you know. But yet
Yeah.
there they were, like in that era. I think, you know, I lived through that era where, you know, the big thing was like uh, fat adaptation and kind of starving yourself and protein shakes, and that's it.
Anchovies on the bus during the Grand
Yeah,
Tour.
and you're just like, man, you look back now, what idiots, you know? Like for what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just been proven in so many ways, like in the last, you know, bunch of years that that was just the worst, right? And there was adaptations that came with it for sure. Like it wasn't the end of the world because when you did eat, you flew. I'm not saying I fell into that thing because I was always pretty big, but you know, I liked eating, so I never really got suckered into that trap. But there was definitely times you go and you test and you get on a good swing of things with like a diet that's kind of working, but you know it's not sustainable, right? You know it's just kind of shredding you down and you're going to pay the bills down the road. That's all
Yeah.
that's life was, right? Shred it down, pay the bills, fight your way back up again, right? And
Yeah.
that's not a way to do something already that's so fucking hard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, going with this train of thought then, one thing that I always found like you were very good at was, or like something you preached to me a lot when I was like, when we first started talking was around like your focus was on longevity. And then the other thing you'd kept saying to me, it's like, you have to be a durable athlete. Like no team is going to give you a contract if you're sick and hurt and like you're just falling apart all the time. And like people like almost let themselves off the hook when you get sick all the time. It's like, hey, dude, that's still your fault. Like you're still not able to do your job. You have to fix this. It's not like it's just like, oh, I can take 5 days off because I'm sick or something like that. It's like, hey, man, it's still a problem you have to deal with, and it's your fault. And like you gave me a whole bunch of advice on this stuff when we were very starting, and I'm at the point where like I just don't get sick now. Like I sure now I'm jinxing it, but like the last time I actually had like a chest infection or something like that was 2017. Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
happen because I've just like and you were giving me all these crazy ideas back at the time that like now a lot of that stuff is pretty common. Like it turns out you were just ahead of it for a lot of the guys at the highest level now do a lot of the stuff you were telling me about back then. And some of it is still thought of as crazy, but like what do you think about longevity versus like what some of the pros do wrong or like just about all this stuff? What do you think?
Well, it is funny, I always laugh because I see stuff happening now that like back in the day, guys just thought I was a whack job. I mean, I was lucky. I was on a team of like just great people and they accepted me for who I was, right? So, when I was doing my kind of different things, let's say, um, they're my beliefs, they're stuff that I learned about, that I read about, and I was always curious. I think curiosity is the greatest gift in life, right? To like be interested in something and try and figure out how to maximize what you can do. I mean, that's sport in general, right? And it's a great thing to go after. But just along what you're saying there is like being I just saw it right away. It's like, okay, I might not be the best guy on the roster, right? And but I can be the guy who's always there. And if you're durable and useful and understand your role, well, I can do every race on the calendar, and the team knows that, right? So I would get my schedule at the beginning of the year and just kind of, like, yeah, especially in the early years, right? I realized that it was just like, yeah, you were kind of they were just chucking you in everything, and I just figured like if you're healthy and strong, you're gonna manage much better. Whereas when you're trying to like, I saw guys working with their own coaches and trying to peak and all these kinds of things. It's like, well, you're still working for a team, right? So you have your personal goals. That's great. But at the end of the day, how you get paid is through your team. I realized pretty like once I became professional, like I did a lot of years just joking around, to be honest. But once I became professional, my understanding was like back at
You
it.
cool? Yeah, yeah, we're
Yeah.
good. All right, sweet. Let's jump back
Okay.
into it.
Yeah. Remind me.
Well, you were talking about like it's important to be durable as an athlete, to be
Yes.
reliable as a professional. And that was such a big thing that it was a really you just said it really quickly to me once before where it was
Mm,
like, "Hey man, you're going up to this pro level right now. It's it's unlikely you're going to win a race. Like you have to win at the lower levels, but once you get to the top level there, you're not really going to be winning. So if you want to get another contract and if you're not the guy scoring points, you have to be doing a job for the team. And that means you got to switch out of going for your own results into providing value for the team."
yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, I think of my first years in Garmin, I just saw right away, like, oh, I can try and do my personal peaks. Odds of me winning something, maybe that's not a champion's mentality, but like, I saw that I had a lot to learn. Those first few races, I was just like getting my head kicked in and going nowhere. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not who I thought I was. When I came from North America, everyone's like, oh, yeah, you're going to do this and go to the
You're going to
tour
win
and
Paris-Roubaix.
Roubaix,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
stuff like that. You're like, you actually kind of believe the hype for a little while, you actually think you're something else coming from North America. And then you either get there in Europe and you're delusional or you kind of accept where you're at, right? And I saw right away, I'm like, oh, I might have some kind of ability, but I've got a lot of learning to do. And how do I do that? Well, get chucked in every friggin' race. You can't. And I think of my first years over there, like I got called up to Milan San Remo kind of like the day before, right? And it was just because I was ready to go. I was always, you said that before. You're ready to go. Well, you always were fit. You were at a good level, not always trying to peak or find some peak and valley, peak and valley. It was like a good level. Well, in that first couple of years, it allowed me to do so many races, and that was really what you're trying to do. Like you said, 1 year wouldn't have been enough. 2 years of doing that. Well, then I actually started getting my shit together, right? Towards the end of that second year. and actually had result. I won World Tour races, Um, but it was only because that first year I was just like up for everything and I just stayed fit. Obviously there's struggles in there and blah, blah, blah. But even when I went to Green Edge, I knew like there was times of the year where I could be relied upon to maybe do something. But ultimately there, I was mostly there for a job. And if I was just ready and fit, you did a lot of races. And then through racing, you get better, right? You're just learning a trade, a whole other trade. You're getting fitter in a different way because racing, there's just no way to replicate that. And yeah, I say that a lot. I think that is part of, and this, part of the issue of coming from North America is you're the big fish. And everyone around you is like, oh man, you're this and you're that. And it's like, I always tell guys from like coming from North America, it's like, you're nothing until you're something in Europe. And it's not to be mean or negative. It's like I hear guys, oh yeah, I'm a sprinter and I'm a time trialist or whatever you think you are. It's like the biggest sprinter in Europe will drop your ass up a climb if you're a climber here. And that's not a fun thing to hear. And it's not that you're not a climber. It's just that the level is just so high. It's every
It's
guy
not even the
lining up
numbers.
there.
It's
Yeah.
not even the numbers. It's like the best analogy is it's like comparing field hockey to ice hockey. And you're
Yeah.
not going to the Maple Leafs or whatever if you don't know how to skate. Or it's
Yep.
comparing flag football to the NFL. And it's not even that, like, if you give that advice to a young guy and he's going to say, it's like, well, look at my numbers and I can look at the numbers these guys are doing. It's like, yeah, but they also know how to do that while positioning themselves and doing all the other stuff where you're going to be wasting all this energy. The numbers don't matter here. And anyone
Yeah.
can be a super freak in their performance test.
Absolutely. And you from like classic styles racing, like when you go up into Belgium and you do all of these climbs that are part of these monuments, you just go like, we're just doing a different order of this stuff. But the guys who are friggin' good at them obviously have big engines, big numbers, but they've been doing it since they were kids. And they know
Yeah.
how every single time how it plays out in this kind of weather and that kind of weather. So, when you coming from Canada and it's like your first time doing that race, you could be you could be on your best form ever and still DNF, right? Get
Mhm.
dropped before the feed zone. And it's not because you're a bad rider, right? It's just you don't know the patterns or the how to play it. And like, this whole thing of like I always used to say, if you're not if you're not like gaining spots, you're probably back at the moto camera, but with the commissaire car right behind you. If you're
Yeah.
not constantly fighting forward, the commissaire car is probably right on your fucking wheel,
Mhm.
And that's how it is in those races. So it's just like a moment of not paying attention or razor focus. You're at the back.
Yeah.
You might gain 100 positions through a corner, but if you don't keep fighting forward, you think you're good for a while. And before you know it, you're at the back again. And
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So now to like tie in a whole bunch of points that we've mentioned here into like a bit of specific advice here. Cause I end up doing like, well, a lot now of these like coaching calls with like young guys, like just wanting to ask advice, like just spend an hour, 2 hours on like a video call just like this and just like asking me for advice. And a big thing that I said or like advice that I pass on, especially for guys like trying to make it is you need about 70 race days in Europe just to learn how the game works. And so the European kids, sure, they have it a bit easier because they grow up getting those race days in all throughout their career. But the North American guys, and it goes back to us saying it's like trying is coming back for a second year. And your
Yeah.
first year is just about getting all those race days in. And then so like a really common question that comes up when guys are asking me for this advice is like, well, how do I get these race days in? Like my team doesn't do enough races or I don't get picked for the races. And I mean, if you're not getting picked for the races on your Conti team, and the answer is not to switch to a different team. If the team is going to the right races, the answer is to be a good enough rider that you're getting picked for the team. Like if your goal is to get to the World Tour and you're not getting picked for the races at the Conti level, the answer is not switching to a different team. It's getting better so you're getting sent to every race. And so the like an example I'd give is because like the one thing I got really lucky with in my first year in Europe was So I did some things wrong and then it ended up working out well. Is like I trained like a freaking lunatic in North America to like get ready for Europe. And that was like the hardest winter I've ever done. And I show up
You
at team
came
camp.
over flying in Mallorca, didn't you? Was that
Yeah,
with Leopard?
exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
talking to you then, and
Yeah,
you were
oh,
just
I'm
like,
sure.
yeah, doing this crazy shit, and I've never had better numbers. I was like, in my head, I was like, that's awesome, but be careful. But that's just an older guy.
Yeah, that is the hard lesson you got to learn. But so
Yeah.
basically, what happened was I got off the plane 10 days later. We're in Mallorca for training camp. I'm going nuts, breaking every power record I have. And the team's seeing this and they're like, oh my God, okay, he might not know anything, but he's really strong. Well, he's going to be pro in a few months. Like, we'll just send him to
They
every
thought you were just
race.
chilling back in wintry Canada, just playing hockey and skiing, right? Barely
Well,
trained at all.
well, the funny thing was, like, my coach at the time, when we first started working together, he kept asking me about the weather so we could plan the training. I'm like, dude, I live in a rainforest, except there's grizzlies instead of monkeys. Like, if you were waiting for the weather, we're not going to start training until June here. But anyways, so I trained the house down, and the first time the team sees me, I'm flying. And so that gives them, they're like, okay, we're going to send. So that was a bad thing to do, as far as it would have been nice to be stronger. But it at least checked the box of showing them, okay, this is the strongest guy on the team. We will send him to every race. The second thing is, so that then my form just went downhill from there. And the biggest thing was me just learning how to live in Europe and just like throwing
Yeah.
away 20% of my performance because I'm figuring out how to get groceries on a bike covered in bandages and all this other nonsense you got to figure out in your first years. But the second part was just being reliable and durable, where it's like the team could call me up the night before Le Semaine or whatever and be like, Jack, be at the service course at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay. And just like you're not getting sick, you're finishing the races, you're not quitting races, you're always up there and being durable. And a lot of that stuff was the stuff that I learned from you. And the fortunate part about that, one, showing I was really strong at the beginning to get picked for the races, and two, being reliable there. I hit my 70 race days by like the end of August.
Yeah.
Like they raced me at least once a week, every single week from the end of February until the second week in October. It was like once or twice a week I was racing except for the week before and after nationals because I was flying to and from Canada. But other than that, it was constant. And that was like the lucky break I caught where I just got so much racing shoved down my throat that by the time I was like 65, 70 race days into it, I was actually making the front splits, like and getting in the break, and like you look around, you're like, holy shit, I'm in the break with Matthew Vanderpool. This is crazy. At this point, I'm like 5 or 6 kilos overweight, and the engine is gone. But at least I've figured out how to race the bike. At that
Yeah.
point, I was like, okay,
That's
I
the
can
trial
do
by
this.
fire, but it's necessary, right? Like you don't get the two things together in those first years. And that's such a great point what you're telling these guys, because I hear it too. Guys kind of do the victim side of things. Oh, the team's not racing me enough. It's like, well, if you're undeniable, the team's going to race you, right? It's not just that the schedule isn't working out for your favor, right? They pick based on what you can do and who's going to be effective and what kind of teammate you are, right? So you showed it there as like what I call what you did is trial by fire, because you came in hot and then you got this opportunity that you had to make the most of. Now, if you came on underdone, the team might have wrote you off. And then let's just say like that might have been better for your progression or like maybe having some results, right? But let's say you came in no good in the training camp, didn't impress, kind of like not in good shape. And then the first races, let's just say the natural spring things happen. You got sick. Maybe you had a crash. And so you didn't impress them at camp. The first few races were a wash. And they're kind of like, I don't know about this guy, you know? And what I saw, as we know, these teams are like old school. So they kind of build an opinion, right? And all you need is a couple directors who are like, oh yeah, that guy's out of shape. He's no good. And now you're like, you've missed 20 races, right? And so I think like everyone thinking that they're this delicate superstar, it's not helping, because you got to go and race and get your head kicked in. And what I will say is everyone goes like, yeah, but that's so hard and you get burnt out. And, you know, like you say, you're 5 kilos overweight, totally like kind of head fucked, but you were racing and you were learning. And ultimately, that's what you need more than anything. The putting it together after that is when you'll start to do things. But in those first few years, unless, like, I don't know how many guys are just such phenoms that when they come in, it's pretty rare, right? For like the first or second year guy to come in and start winning races, right?
Mhm.
It's maybe 10 guys a year, if that, right?
Yeah.
Out of how many in the World Tour and Pro Tour and Continental level, right? It's that's a lot of riders.
Yeah. And
So
like to make it a little bit more like motivating for those guys and stuff like that. Like for example, I've had a bunch of these calls with guys where it's like they're kind of towards the end of their first season, something like that, and we're having this conversation, and then you just pull up pro cycling stats and you ask them, it's like, is there races missing here? Like how many races are you doing? They look and I did like, maybe 14 or 15 race days, and I'm just like, man, like you haven't even tried. And I mean that
yeah.
as like a motivational thing where it's like
Mhm.
you haven't you haven't even finished trying the first box yet. Like we just got to get
Yeah.
these 70 race days in. And I know it sucks. And I got lucky that like my team did do a lot of races. But if you can't get it that way, you got to go guest ride for team. Like I hated living close to like Belgium and the Netherlands because I just wanted to be in the mountains. I did nothing against
Yeah.
those countries. I like the mountains. But
Yeah.
the nice thing about it was there's a race every day that you can
Yeah.
get thrown into to do this. And that's how I got so much racing exposure there. You got to get those race days in. That's the first thing. And yeah, like you got to get picked for the team because it's like, man, if you're falling apart and you're not getting picked at this level, it's how are you going to get to the next level there? And just don't
Yeah.
quit too early because you haven't even checked the first box yet.
Yeah. No, it's such important stuff. And I swear it's again the big issue of big fish, small pond kind of problem is that some guys come in with a bit of a head and maybe they have a coach in their ear who's telling them the wrong advice. And that's
Mm.
conflicting with the team, right? Like I said, they kind of think they're a star, and maybe they are, right? But you don't find out unless you race a bunch. And
Mhm.
what I will say is like, you got those 70 chances to race in that first year. I bet there were some moments where even if you weren't on the best form, you're like, I could see how this could play out next year. If I come in knowing this and come in with some form, like if I hit this right. So it's about putting those pieces together. And unfortunately, like our society's bent on just instant gratification and like, just we see the superstars and we want like everyone wants to be like the superstars. I remember in my time as Peter Sagan came up, as a 19-year-old, and he was winning uphill finishes and bunch kicks and time trials and prologues. Right? That was kind of the first of those guys. And he wasn't even trying, it didn't look like. Everyone wants to be like that, but that's not the reality for the rest of us. And I think that's hard with kids who've been raised with that kind of everything is available, everything is instant, everything is there for you, right? Um, it's hard to break that out of the mentality.
Yeah. No, totally. And then I'm just trying to just to actually like hit on a couple points. Do you remember what some of the big things that you were focusing on that you thought were important for longevity? Like I just remember it was the blue blocker glasses. It was a lot around light, the grounding or earthing, like barefoot walking, the cold exposure, never like starving yourself. Like, do you remember like some of the big things that really made a difference for you?
Yeah, so it's funny, like I still think light is everything. It's why I really have trouble like just doing computer stuff. I like even if I have important things to do, I push it off because I think it's more important to be outside in the light. It's one of my struggles with winters here and why I love skiing is because it's the one thing that kind of mitigates that. But I believe in so much in circadian rhythms and full spectrum of light and also just being connected to the earth as much as you can. And for the longest time, everyone thought I was just a hippie or whatever. And um, turns out there's a lot of science to support that. I never needed that to just know that it was good. I quite often, I'd be at the Giro and you'd find me on a 6 a.m. in the morning at the beach swimming butt naked, in the Mediterranean in some little cove, because I found some sweet place. And those were resets for me, even in a really kind of insane environment of a grand tour. So that stuff was really important. I think the food side of things, people get crazy about food and what's driving cycling world right now. I find it so crazy. It's just like processed sugar, right? Like the amount of sugar coursing through these guys' veins is just insane. And that's fine. Performance comes with that. Um, but I'd say just in normal life, like it's so simple. Just eat the things that we've always been eating that haven't been processed as much as you can. It's not like you're going to die if you don't, but like try and do it 80-20. So I think that is important. Think really paying attention. It's one thing to have a coach and to read and read research, but I think it's so important to have a connection to your own body and really try to understand your own body as far as your performance and your recovery. And I think that's where I see so many people, even people that I work with, I'm amazed, like a grown man has absolutely no concept that he's cooked. I've worked with people that they've been doing like intensity 5-6 days a week on a trainer every morning and then doing some crazy job, never seen the light of day in a city environment, and they're wondering why they're burnt out. And I'm just like, man, one thing, you've never built a foundation, first of all, and then you've just been doing like tempo threshold and VO2 max. It's like, I don't know how you thought that was going to work out, because it's like so many of those things, right? That these kind of fad things or hit training, whatever. It's like you have a honeymoon period and it's awesome. And then you go chasing that feeling and it's fleeting away. And it's like, how did you get to this point where you don't have that connection anymore, right? To just know that you're cooked and you've made, like, have you been tracking any of the progression? Because all that's been happening is you've been going downhill. And I'm like, they'll be working with coaches that are subscribing this. And I'm like, does the coach track progression? Right? Like, or is it just he's pulling cool workouts off of the internet and sending them your way for a month at a time?
Yeah.
And so, that's hard for me to watch, because it's like, it is the coach who's making money and grifting people. Yes. But it's you're a grown person. Like, where did you lose the connection to your body to not know that, to not listen to these and unfortunately, like society and social media and all these things, they're like pushing so hard, this kind of hard men kind of mentality of just crushing yourself. And, oh, you're only of value if you're constantly crushing yourself. It's like, no, you're a human organism. You need to look after yourself. You need to recover. And like, I swear, a lot of those people that I work with, they need months and months of recovery. And it's not necessarily of the body, it's of the mindset. Because they're just caught in this thing of like this belief of they have to keep pushing so hard. And they're not anything if they don't, And it's crazy to watch, because where are you going with that? And yeah, so anyways, I see that a lot. For me, that's not longevity, And again, I'm not a guy who's like, oh, I want to live to 120. No, not really. I just want to have good years while I'm alive. If that means, another 10 years of sweet, like doing this, well, then so be it. I'm not like, there is a side effect to a lot of what we do, right? This heavy endurance work is not always the prescription for longevity. I think there's a lot of good things that come of it. So I'm trying to mitigate the wacky stuff that I like the long distance stuff or the kind of constant training that I like to do, So yeah, I'm still learning. I'll always be learning. And what I will say is funny is like so many things kind of come full circle, right? When you're learning about all this stuff, you kind of becomes a doctrine. It becomes a religion a bit, and you're like preaching it to others. And then I learn more and more, and I start to realize I've been duped by the research or the study that is highly biased. It's, if you start looking at who's paying for that research, who's getting the funding and all those things, you start to go, oh, there's a bias here, right? You and I we can come up with a plan, a thesis, and come up with anything we want due to a bias, right? If we have a belief so much in something, we can cook the books to create a study that shows, the things that we kind of want to show. And so you start to learn about all that stuff and supplement world and all these things, right? These claims. And you start to go like, you know what? The simplest is the best. And because ultimately we're pretty simple and we've been walking this planet for a very long time. And so yeah, I've found that's helped a lot because it frees your mind of all the clutter that comes with that other world of biohacking. I think it's interesting. The bio, like it's a term I don't necessarily like, but it's interesting. But again, you start to find out that most of these people are swindlers, right? And they're selling you something. And it's like the whole cold thing. It was a rage, and now it's like, oh well, I don't know, it's kind of dangerous, and it's like you and I have dealt with cold stuff. I was really into it for a while. I learned a lot. When I say it's like the key to longevity, no, it's a piece of just human adaptation. Everything we do is about adaptation. But if something becomes a religion, it starts to get a little weird. And you start preaching it as, and then again, it's like sauna, right? They talk about, I love saunas. I built a sauna. I sauna every day. Am I thinking that it's going to add 10 years to my life? Like you read some of these research studies on Finnish dry saunas and life expectancy. It's like, well, is that correlated to the sauna, or is it correlated to people who find value in the time to take that time out of their day to have a sauna? Are they not linked to other healthy habits? Right? So much of this research and studies, like when you kind of look at it from a different angle, it's like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Probably more than saunas being the thing. Yeah, I'm sure there's some cardiovascular benefits, no doubt, no doubt. But I think it's more related to the fact that those people are taking time out of their day to do this thing they feel is important and kind of de-stressing the rest of their life, right? And I think we need to look at a lot of this stuff like that, you know? So yeah, I could go on and on about it, but I think those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah. Well, I think you just have to go through the process of you try all the crazy things only to come back to you. Like I did the same thing. Like I had tried every little gizmo and toy and all this kind of stuff, and I haven't touched any of it in years. And I managed
Yep.
to go faster than ever. And the big
Yeah.
light bulb moment for me there was like going to the first time I went to like a pro training camp. It's the one 2 weeks before the Tour de France with Chris Froome and every expert. Like the money was no object at this. They
Yeah.
did everything. And then you just see is like how simple it was. Like
Yep.
30 minutes of core
Yep.
training, hard
Yeah.
training. Okay, they measured everything Chris ate, like nutrition was really good. But then other than
Yeah.
that, the guys just lay on their bed all day.
Yeah.
Like there's a box of toys and all this other stuff never got touched. Box of
Yeah.
supplements. It's like I think some guys tried fish oil and BCAAs at one point. Then they're like, doesn't
Yeah.
really do anything. Move on.
Well, I'm sure you saw too, like because when you go through those phases, there are acute moments where you really focus in on this stuff. And like I said, there's power in placebo. And some of these things maybe do work, maybe don't. It's hard to say. But there's also the stress that comes with them. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. And like, it's like this rush to kind of adhere to these protocols that are somehow going to be miraculous for you. And I think once you've been through it, you kind of go like, there's actually more stress involved in doing all that shit.
Well, it's just
you know,
taking energy from the other stuff. It's like you got to think it's like you have a bucket of energy that you can
Yep.
pour this water into all these
Absolutely.
different glasses. And
Yeah.
you pouring it into the special foam rolling technique and the massage gun and the Compex and the Normatec and blah, 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 blah. It's like, hey, you could also just save that water to sleep better, to train more, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, it's a hard lesson you got to learn.
Well, and I liken that, just one last thing on that too, is like, altitude camps, right? It's like it's always on this physiological effect, right? That's going to come from training. And I'm sure there is, it shows in the blood values, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately you're taking 3 weeks or whatever it is aside and going to a pretty sweet place where there's no distraction and you're just training. And you usually end climbing some 10K climb at the end of hard training. And it's like, well, I kind of think probably the bigger effect comes from that,
Yeah.
right? Just being in an environment that's dedicated to training. You're not, so like a guy, let's just take a guy who's on Ineos, right? He lives up in the UK. Yeah, maybe has a family or, and has distractions, right? And he can go to this altitude camp and just live like a monk, smash it out. Everything's done for him. You can't tell me that there's like the big effect of that doesn't come from just the simplicity of that life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I love it, man. Okay. Can we change gears and talk about your book more? Can we
Yeah.
do that? Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Oh, dude, I'm excited for this then. All right. So, dude, please, will you please make an audiobook of this? Like, I'll do it for it. Like, I would do it for you, and it would take 3 days to go from start to
I
having
believe
it
it.
on Audible or whatever. But no one wants to hear my voice. They want to hear your
Yep.
voice doing it. So if you want to do it, I will hold your hand and help you because I will listen to the book 15 times when I'm
Yeah.
out training because I've known you for a decade and I thought I knew a lot of the stories. And going through going through the book, it's so good, man. Like it's just gold. There's no filler. Everything is amazing. And every story in there, I'm like, I haven't heard any of these stories. And like, there's so much better. And then I would get to like one story where it's like, oh, I heard a version of this story that was completely different that like Mike Creed told me like 10 years ago. And I was like, dude, you really are a legend with these stories. Cause like the stories just get twisted and turned and told into something different.
Absolutely.
And, dude, they're amazing. So please, if you're going to make an audiobook, I will help you as much as I can to make this happen. Cause I just want to listen to it.
I should get on that. It's not my forte is, yeah, I'd probably need your help there. Yeah.
Dude, absolutely. 100%. Cause like we can get this done. If you're doing the talking stuff, we can get it done in a week. And
Yeah.
I want to listen to it, but okay. So here, I'm going to read you a section of the book here. And then you just tell, this is a bit of a long section, but I love this. And I just want to hear what you think coming out of this. So the one that stands out, the 2008 World Championships, second in the time trial. At the end of 2008, I had run 7th in the Olympic Games, then finished second in the world against top-level riders on the biggest teams riding the biggest races, while I was coming from a small Canadian team that was closing down at the end of the year. It was the end of the season, and I could reflect on the moment, and yet I didn't have any money. So the morning after winning the silver medal, I took my Norco road bike with the morning's newspaper clipping as photographic evidence that I could use to proof as to who I was, and sold it. By rights, any typical road racer shouldn't be flat broke and going to pawn their bike off in that situation, but I needed money and I had to do it. The thing is, I never thought I could make it as a professional. The number of times I asked myself, can I do this? It was an impossibly long journey from those first bike trips, collecting empties on the side of the highway in British Columbia, to cash in and buy myself a sack of potatoes. From getting my head kicked in, first Americas, then over to Europe, still not knowing if the sport was for me. But then there were moments when I realized, oh, I can make it. When I came back from a potentially career-ending concussion, won the prologue of the Eneco Tour, those were the moments that made it worthwhile. Most of all, I remember in July 2000, the early days, going down with my dad to this place in Washington State for the Leavenworth Road Race. It was a big event for the Pacific Northwest. It was a hilly course, Cat 3 or Cat 4 level competition, 110 kilometers, nothing too crazy. I went out on one of my typical smash it, head down rides. I won by 10 minutes and remember my dad was so proud. We made it home and I was cooked. I probably would have drunk anything. I probably wouldn't have drunk anything during the race and fell asleep for the rest of the afternoon. I'd crushed myself. But when I woke up, the feeling was, I can do this. That is a powerful feeling, a beautiful feeling. Dad and I knew I had some kind of potential, but the race solidified our confidence. We were making progress, smashing it, proving there was more to come. The win wasn't important. What mattered was how you did it. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, that's a wild one because that encapsulates a lot in there. Like, yeah, that's yeah, it's pretty cool, like I said, to hear stuff like that because you edit that book a million times, right? And it was funny because I still enjoyed so many aspects of it. A lot of times, when you keep rereading what you've written, you kind of like, it whatever. It gets old, because they're your stories. But yeah, I think that there kind of epitomizes what we're talking about, right? Like I was getting these kinds of results, yet I was just like had nothing, and this goes back to that thing, but I also didn't really think like I was just like I loved it. If I had to go to another team like Symmetrics and just keep racing around North America, that was fine. And I think like that's got to be part of it. It didn't mean that I worked any less. Because like I always think like when I was racing for Symmetrics or whatever, I still considered that training like a pro. I mean, we know that's not the same level. The races weren't the same level, right? But my point is like my perspective was I was training as if I was going to the world tour. I had no idea what that was, but I was working my ass off because I had this belief that that work pays, right? And when you love something that much, you don't know where anything's going to go. And I always tell like young people, just because you're like doing all the right steps and all the 1% and training like crazy, and it doesn't mean it's going to work out, right? So it's like, it's got to be awesome. It's got to be good. And so, I had those moments and I still laugh when I think of selling my road bike at world championships, and most guys who who medaled in the worlds, um, they were on a world tour team and they were probably celebrating. And I took the train from our janky hotel up to like the pavilion expo area of the start line of the world championships road race, which I didn't get selected for because of whatever reason, which was fine. I did my thing. And I'm trying to flog this bike for nothing because I knew I was going home and we hadn't been getting paid on our Symmetrics team, right? For I think it was like we stopped getting paid in the spring. So basically I was like to kind of fund that year, I was going into debt to continue racing, right? And the team gave us the option. They're like, you guys can get paid for like whatever's left in the money, or we can put that money and you guys can race for the rest of the year, right? And everyone decided let's keep racing because that's going to be our best option to actually, because none of us were making bank anyways, right? It was enough to kind of survive, but you'd figure it out to keep racing, to have the opportunity, right? And yeah, what a strange thing to be standing there kind of like almost begging someone to, most people are looking at me at like the hell is this guy doing, Trying to sell it, just standing there. Like talk about imposter uh feeling or syndrome, like you're like, did that just happen yesterday? Like, this is what I'm doing for the day. I have to do this for my own survival. Um, I'm going home after this and, I got to figure out how to make it through the winter. Right. And, yeah, so it's so crazy to think back because like, that's one of the things I love about the book more than anything is that for me, it's like you, it feels like a lifetime ago or a different life. And it's so nice to have everything there. Because we go through phases in life as I'm sure right? Like this phase is different than your earlier 20s when you're on leopard and you're trying to make it, right? What you're doing now is totally different life, right? And you'll look back at that time and just be like, whoa, that was crazy, what I was doing there. And that's how I see it, right? And that's kind of the beauty of life, to evolve and change and grow. And there's a lot of things I'm in that book where I'm just like, whoa, yeah, that was me for sure. I'm different now, but that was me, definitely. Yeah.
It's amazing, man. And I mean, I hope that's motivating to other guys for like the fact that like I mean, it comes back to the point where I'm like, the real world is kindergarten after pro cycling if you can figure out how to apply the skills. Because it's like you were second in the world and you're having to sell your road bike the next day and prove who you are with a newspaper clipping. Like, that's killing to hear. But like,
Yeah.
if you were second in the world in any other career, you'd be set for life
Yeah.
for that. After, and
Well,
you're
you know
like,
what? There's another funny thing attached to that story as well, because when the team stopped paying us, it kind of meant that we could go a bit free agent with the equipment, right? And because I was going to the Olympics, I was like, "Oh, I need to get a better TT bike." This tank of a bike I was riding, it was just wasn't. I mean, if you looked at the rigs, the guys I was going to be up against, it was like no effing way, right? And so the Orbea guy, I tell this in the book, but this just adds to that world's kind of experience. I was searching around and reaching out, and I thought, Cervelo, that's a brand, it's a Canadian brand at the time, and a big company. I thought, oh, this might be cool. They'll want to help a guy out going to the Olympics, right? And I'm going to go to World Championships at the end of the year. Like that's good for them. I would think they're big on their TT bike. That could be something cool. I reach out and they get back to me and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can get you a frame for like $3,000 or something like that, right?" And I was like, a guy with no money, I'm just like, I was just kind of shocked, right? Because you know, whatever. But I was just like, huh, that really kind of blew my mind. And then I was lucky enough to get in touch with a friend who was the rep for Obeah, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll help you out." And he reached out to the Basque guys, in Spain there, and they sent over, hooked me up with the frame, and we had the conversation, and they're like, you know, they're like, "We can't just give this to you because it's just not in our budget, but we want you to use it, and you can give it back at the end of the year." Like after World Championships, and then they go, unless you medal in the Worlds, and everyone laughed, right? Because it was just like, great joke, guys.
yeah,
And yeah, sure enough, like you get to Worlds and medaled with that with that bike, and that's kind of crazy because that is I don't keep anything, I don't have anything like I don't know bikes and stuff. I have the Giro bike. I have a pink bike that was
hell yeah.
it was a small frame that I kept for my wife. It's her bike. Um, but that bike, that TT bike, I would have loved to have kept, but that was like I had to sell it when I got home. I just had no money, so it was like
Oh,
the option of keeping this thing that like has no real value to me anymore. I was at that point I was going to Garmin. I needed to still exist for October, November, December till that first
yeah.
paycheck kicked in, right? And you got bills to pay and you got to eat. But again, just another funny story. But yeah, you make it. You keep pushing, you make it. And I just think like so many people, just like we were discussing earlier, um, just kind of stop too soon.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Oh God. Okay. All right, dude. I have a bunch more stories lined up here. You want to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Do you want to just tell the water skiing jump story?
Well, what, just like your first time, like how I said in there, the first time, like
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't want to read the whole thing, but just like I'd never
yeah,
heard this water skiing. I didn't know you had a water skiing career.
yeah. Well, you know, so it's funny, my dad is Norwegian, and he came from a ski jumping background, ski flying, and always cross country skiing and downhill skiing and all that stuff, and when when I was little, we had like a Zodiac boat, one of those rubber boats, and he had like this oversized engine, just like the wrong setup for that. But that's how we learned how to water ski. My dad was always very cheap with everything, but big on ideas and plans and commitment to stuff. And so we just kind of like did that as a fun thing, right? And then, as you kind of get better. Everyone's kind of getting better. We're doing it a lot. We just found it a good pastime. My dad was really into it, and he became very interested in ski jumping, water ski jumping, because of his background. He wanted to have that feeling again, right? And so that kind of progressed. We were doing like slalom and all these things, and then water ski jumping was like the next thing. And it's kind of this crazy event where you just go flying basically into a plywood ramp that has like some water on it, right?
With a dirt bike helmet on.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, again, like I said, my dad was very frugal, and he wasn't going to pay for any of that fancy equipment. Like proper water ski helmet has like these blow off compression straps, right? So, and these holes, these big holes in it. So if you land and kind of like go on your back and hook the water, the helmet blows off, right? And but we just figured, we'll bore some holes in like a crappy motocross helmet with the straps, that don't blow off, right? And I still think back to like my first few jumps. Like my brother and I always joke about it, but we would get up at 4 a.m, go up to Cultus Lake, and go water ski jumping before school. And I remember like I'd come back and I'd have like basically I'd be like neck injuries, right? Like because like I said, you would crash and land, and the helmet would just fill with like water, but the strap wouldn't blow off. So it just like basically like hyper extend your neck, right? And kind of like rip the ligaments and tendons, whatever the heck holds everything.
Hold your head on.
Yeah. And I remember just being in class and just being like, people would be talking to you and you'd be kind of, what? Like you couldn't really turn. You had to like shift your whole body. And I was just like, yeah, that's probably not normal, but man, it's great. Like I said, my dad wanted to spend time with us, and we did it in different ways, like everything, like we set up like in this canal out in the Sumas, like this narrow channel that had just enough room for a water ski course, like a slalom course.
Yeah.
And we were the first guys in there. It's like basically runoff from all the horse and cow manure up there. And we had to like winch the truck in to get the boat in. So we'd winch it off this huge cottonwood tree, because it was like there was nothing built to like get the boat in there, you know what I mean? And yeah, it was just my dad always had like a different approach to things. And I think he was a big kind of influence on my life with just how to approach stuff. It wasn't always correct, but it was his way, right? And yeah, it was good memories of my life for sure.
That's amazing, man. And okay, so going back, because I forgot about this and I just remembered it when you were just telling that story, when you were talking about like having to sell your bike after the Worlds and everything like that. I've never forgotten this because it was such a great story, but it came back to me again when I was reading through your book, and your story about like the new construction boots at the hardware store came up. I was like, okay, I remember this because when I was like trying to just train my face off through the winter, and I came up with my whole way to sneak onto the cross country ski trails in the middle of the night, and that was hilarious. And then when I finally got caught after I'd planned this whole thing out like a prison break. Like I'd park outside of the resort, and once they'd close, I'd be like watching everybody leave, and I think everyone's left, and I start running up the road with like my skis, my ski boots on, my poles, and then you'd see headlights coming around one of the hairpins. You gotta like jump over this huge snowbank to like hide, because if they see somebody running up into the resort after it's closed, they're gonna stop and ask questions. And I'd do this, I don't know, 5 or 10 times with cars coming back for it, and you're swimming in the snow under it. And then there was one time like the snowplow came by, and I didn't know it was a snowplow. I just thought it was another car. And then this tidal wave of snow comes over and hits me. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? But like some of the most fun memories of my life doing that. And I remember I had in my head that I wanted to try to ski 100 kilometers in a day. That was like, I was like, this is going to be sick. I'm going to do that. And then so I planned this whole thing out. And I remember I saved the last climb that I'd do of the day was like up to this big hut, the Journeyman Lodge around Whistler.
Yeah.
You know this one.
Yeah.
And so that would be the last one, because then I knew I had like, I don't know, 10, 15 kilometers of downhill at the end to save me. And I'm getting up there. I'm totally dead. I've been out for like, I don't know, 9 hours or something like this at this point. and you're going through and it's a blizzard. And when you have your headlight on, it's like you look like you're in space with just all the
Yeah.
snowflakes flying at you
Cool
and stuff like
feeling.
that. Yeah. It did feel cool at the time. I was just dying. But
Yeah.
anyways, then I come around the corner and you see this whole hut is lit up in front of you. And you just think you arrived at like the gates of heaven because you're like, oh my God, this is the best. And I just like walk in the door and just crash on the floor and I'm just laying there. And then the people that work there come up, they're like, are you okay? Like, where did you come from? Because they know the resort's closed. Like, where did you come from? Out of the mountains here. They bring me like a hot pot of coffee and Christmas cookies, and I just demolished all of them. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is the greatest. Anyways, like ski back down, get back to the truck, drive home. And then I'm like, I got to tell Swain this. Like, he's going to love this story and whatnot. And then at the time, I had like these cheap ski boots that I'd gotten, and they were like totally like just the cheapest ones you could get. And they're totally broken. And everything was broken on them. And so the way that I made it work was I started using hockey tape to tape my feet in. So I'd leave my Leatherman in the truck.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like I'd tape them up, like get them on, tape them up, cut it. And then at the end of the day, I had to like cut my feet free of them. And the next day, my feet were so swollen with like lacerations and cuts and bruises. My feet were
Yeah,
so
there's-
swollen, I couldn't get them in my cycling shoes. I'm telling you this story, and I think I just skimmed over that. And you're just like, do you want a pair of boots? It's just like, actually, I'd really love a pair if you got them. And you like asked me what size. They're like, yeah, I got a pair of boots. Like, what kind of bindings do you have? And I had just like some shitty old bindings that like they had 2 pins instead of 1 pin. And you just ended up giving me a pair of boots and skis, and I still have them. That's my set that I have in Canada. And and then so like 3 days later, I was like, I'm gonna go try this again. I'm gonna go try to do this again with the new stuff. And dude, I don't know if I was like waxing my skis with like scented candles or something like that, but when I got on your stuff, it was so fast. And I did like 120K, or it was like 120 or 130K in I think the same amount of time, doing it like 3 days later on your stuff. And I was like, this is the best.
Crazy. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. You were telling me your stories there. Duct tape doesn't give too much, eh?
Yeah, no. Okay. Can I read you another section from your book
Sure.
here? Okay. Evan was the guy who exposed me to the outdoors. He opened my eyes to rock climbing, to mountaineering, and that became a bug that took over my life. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. At that point in my life, I was just trying to get out into the mountains. Skiing, climbing, exploring. I was looking for any opportunity I could. I would often just drive up to the Chilliwack Mountains, which were the closest part of the coastal range to Langley. Further down in the U.S., it turns into the Cascades, one big line of mountains, all fresh granite, still growing, with a rich ecosystem full of old-growth Douglas fir and cedarwood. A good day out in winter, whatever the conditions were, would be trudging around snowshoeing and backcountry snowboarding. Even just bombing down through a forestry road was a good day. Then spring and summer came around and I'd get into mountaineering. Granite is the surface that gives the most grip, and luckily for me, you don't need a lot of technical ability. Wearing climbing shoes is like wearing a suction cup. Up in the Chilliwacks is a peak named Sless Mountain. It has a famous history. Back in 1956, a DC-4 airliner crashed there. It's a protected area nowadays because of that, but back when I was climbing around there, you could still find shrapnel and bits and pieces of the plane. It fascinated me. A lot of people looked at me and asked, what the fuck was I doing? You have nothing, they would say. You go on these random stupid trips. You're not going anywhere, not accomplishing anything. But I would argue this was the best part of my life. Life is about perspective. Time and freedom are treasures. I had both in droves. I was convinced that because everything was working out, it was always going to work out. I didn't have a grand plan because I didn't need one. I wasn't going to be the guy making all kinds of money. I was going to keep doing stuff. Sometimes I'd have a little money, sometimes no money. That's how I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, it still holds true. That's the life, man. Like, I said it before, I love my life now. I have kids and, you have so many more responsibilities. And that's why I think it's so important to kind of have some youth like that, some time in your life where, yeah, you just have time and to have the perspective to get to enjoy it, because I think that's probably the more important fact there is a lot of people can have time, but they might spend it just scrolling or watching Netflix or laying around, I think it's, yeah, my dream for any young person is to have a phase of their life like that, and not push to change it there's no rush. to like you said, right? 25 or 30, chasing after becoming a pro. There's no difference there. But the difference is like a life of regret, of wondering if I ever did that. And I see so many young guys go to the world tour and it's all they've known. It's all they've ever chased and they've never lived um anything else. They've never experienced much else. And I think, you know, it's not doesn't decide whether you make it or not, but it's like it's nice to have a different perspective, as I'm sure just from cycling was your life from quite a young age, but you did a lot of different things, right? And you found value in different things. So it helped with your perspective, right? And I always say it like, you know, I came from such a janky setup when, I talk about these South American races and, just the life there. And then when you make it to the world tour, I said it in the book, you'd be on the kind of B grade bus, right? There's like two buses on a team and the ones for the Tour de France and the monuments kind of thing, and then you have the lesser version. And you would watch guys get on, just be like, oh, kind of pissed, He's- yeah, you're just kind of, I don't know. I just find that perspective's everything, right? And I think that's um, to have time and a good perspective that is as free as it gets. And I like I said, I look at that time as some of the best times of my life. Obviously it's different now, but yeah, that was great.
Man, like, and I'm telling it, like, anybody who thinks they know your stories and stuff like that has to read the book because, like, I thought, like, I'd hear the stories as far as, like, oh, yeah, Swain was, like, living like a bum, like, traveling around. I'm like, when I read the book and I was like, holy shit, this is way more extreme than the stories I heard and whatnot for
Well,
it. Like,
yeah, the stories always get a little, like you said, twisted and construed and kind of based on what people wanted to say, right? And
yeah,
but yeah, that's the
but my point is the fact the stories I heard were tame compared to what I
right.
read in your book. I was like, what the? It was way more extreme than this. Like,
Yeah,
okay. You want me to I'll read you another one here. We'll get to Ivan here. I did not know this, man. Before long, I was living with Ivan across the Langley area. He worked night shifts at the Chevron gas station, which I'm sure he'll be proud of, while writing and playing music. He was squatting and dumpster diving in those days, and they didn't lock the dumpsters, and if you knew where you could go, you could live like a king. We ate grapes on turn, day-old bread, bags of apples, the waste of Western civilization, and for a while we lived like what we called the ghost house. It was an abandoned house from the 1930s, very old in that part of the world, with a long dark driveway and an old Fisher stove inside. Ivan would have a candle going in the window when he was in, and I would come up the driveway in a tin can sound of a Robert John driveway to the tin can sound of Robert Johnson playing from Ivan's shoplifted ghetto blaster. We got kicked out of that place one cold morning in the fall when the cops showed up. I particularly remember Ivan standing in the doorway in his underpants, arguing with the police about squatters' rights. He had his bullet points loaded and a mind sharp enough to spout them out like a machine gun and confidence to stare a guy out right in the eye. One of the cops said, "You say one more word, we're throwing you in jail." Ivan said, "One more word." What a scene to wake up to. They gave us 24 hours to get out. That's how I was living life. Dude, you were literally
yeah.
homeless.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, look, that like, yeah, it's such a contrast of the cycling life, but that was like I said, I had no real ambition. That was a very good time of my life. It's funny, because people would look at that as down and out and, oh, you're struggling or suffering, and it was great, man. Like, again, it was freedom. You had nothing. So you were completely mobile. Like we had our bikes and I don't know. I just goes back to that thing. I didn't need more. There's nothing more I was searching for. And you're working odd jobs but you just had freedom to do whatever. And that coupled with like a fascination for mountains, it's endless. So I just like I wouldn't exchange any of it. And the fact that we're able to find food in dumpsters, like perfectly good food, I mean, that made things even better, right? And Ivan, he was far more punk rock than I was, so I just kind of go along. Like that wasn't my thing to go on. Like I wasn't exactly stoked on squatting, you know. But at the same time, it was kind of like a cool experience to just you weren't dependent off of anything, and that was kind of more the experiment, right? And like I said, like that part of life, that's what it's all about. Is finding out who the hell you are. And like I said, I wouldn't exchange any of those experiences for anything. Like that was awesome.
Dude, insane. And so literally for anybody who reads the book, it's like one story after the next. There's no filler. It's just golden stories. And then like okay, actually I think this might make you laugh. The story, so I got the real version that you told in the book where it was like your grain surfing trip to, was it Jasper or Banff?
Well, it was a trip to nowhere, really. It was just we were trying. Like I think the end goal, Ivan had to get to Edmonton,
Yeah.
but we were kind of just riding the rails, and like we had to be at Edmonton for him at some certain point, but we were kind of up for whatever. And that's kind of the life of riding the rails. You got to be kind of open to going anywhere on any schedule. So yeah, I mean that was just part of that summer, right? We'd finished up our railway tie stacking job, and well, we kind of pissed off. We got out of there, and that's where we kind of learned to ride the rails. And yeah, we were heading on the Yellowhead route. You know, it heads up kind of northeast.
And so, like, that's a really long story, and people should probably just read the book to hear the whole story. But just to give you an idea for it, like the version of that story that I heard years ago, that I'm like, I gotta ask Swain about this if this is true at some point. The more tame version was, oh yeah, Swain was like hopping trains or something like that with his buddy, and they were, I don't know, they were in the forest and they ran into these hunters, and they got into an argument with these hunters, and then the hunters like threatened them with a gun to like shoot them or something like that. And so when they were running out, they saw like their truck or something like that and pushed it off a cliff so that they couldn't run after them. So like they pushed the hunter's truck off a cliff and then they just had to run for like 3 days to get out of town because they knew the hunters were going to be chasing them with guns to like get them something. Like, what the hell? And then
Yeah,
when I hear the
that's
real
pretty
version
wild.
of this, when I hear the real version of this story in
Yeah.
your book, I'm like, oh my God, it gets even better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's like a lot of stuff mixed up in there sometimes. Some stories get mixed together, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that got chopped out of the book just for flow and like and just like it was just too much. Um, like I joke with Richard, my friend who ghost wrote it. Um, there's a whole other book in there, right? And there was so much stuff we had to cut out, and that was hard. That was really hard editing that stuff because I was like, you know, it's a story, right? And so we've discussed like how to like kind of, you know, maybe do like a secondary audio version or something like that, right? To just kind of add to the stories that kind of got cut out.
Absolutely, man. That's what the audiobook needs to be, because you could do it like David
Yeah.
Goggins' book, where like
Yeah.
Richard, me, like I would do it if you wanted, like just to do a
Yeah.
podcast, just to like put extra stories between the chapters and whatnot for
Yeah.
it. Like I want this audiobook so bad because I just want to listen to it
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah, no, we've discussed that would be a good way to do it, you know, kind of read the chapter and then kind of, or like every section that there's a story that kind of adds to that to kind of just stop and then say, yeah, so what happened here? And then, you know, and then just go on to that, right? Tell the story. Yeah.
That
It could be a fun way
absolutely,
to do it for sure.
dude. I'd like, you tell me the day, I will drop everything to make this happen. And give me a week. We'll have it done in a week. I promise.
Yeah.
But
I believe it.
okay. Okay. You want to tell one more story? Fred?
Sure.
Okay. Well, okay. How about this then? You can either pick your favorite story that you want to tell from the book, or you can pick from one of these two that I was thinking, either the story when you snuck onto the military base to go climb Border Peak, which is hilarious, or going to climb Mount Waddington, or one of your favorites,
Oof.
Pick one of the three.
The Waddington's epic. I will tell a funny story related to the Border Peaks. So the Border Peaks is a funny story just because it's like a bombing, it's like a Canadian military bombing area. They train a lot of their cadets. There's like a big military base there in Chilliwack, and that's a place where there's a lot of active training, and so they really try and restrict people going in and out of there. But obviously in the mornings, it's like there's early mornings is a time where the troops have to get in and the gates are open and blah blah blah. And we didn't like, because this is the day before internet. Like now you can topo map everything and see like Google Earth exactly where the roads lay. But like we had very basic, like it's it's that time. It's the 90s, man. And we just had very basic information, right? And we weren't the guys to go and buy topo maps. And the crazy thing about topo maps is, is like it changes. Next year it can be a totally different road going in wherever, right? But as far as we knew, this road led up to where we needed to get up into the Alpine country. And we didn't care that the military uh was there,
dropping
right?
bombs.
Yeah, we just, I don't know. It's just like, again, as part of that youth, you just don't think about stuff in the
Young,
same
dumb,
way
and
that
invincible.
yeah. And so, we went blasting through there early in the morning. Guys were waving us down, like yelling at us to stop. And we were in this old crappy Toyota 1969 Corolla, Ivan's car. And we just pin it right through, just like pretending like these guys don't exist, right? And of course they're like, this is a mission for them, right? To chase these yahoos up the mountain. They got 4x, and we're just pinning it and like going through these big drainage dips in this little Toyota Corolla, smashing our heads on the roof. And we get up to like the where the road, basically, how they kind of deactivate, right? They just dig out a big pit and then it's like a big mound. And we just park there, dogs, gear, we just start booking it up the next part of the kind of deactivated road to get up into the high country, right? And we know those guys aren't going to bother chasing, it's Canadian military. Let's face it, they're probably not in the best shape. And yeah, we go up there and like spend the night, do our climbing, and yeah, we come back down, and of course there's like a guy waiting for us, and then as we talk to him, we find out we're in big trouble, and then the rest of the crew comes up, and and my friend Ivan, he's just not afraid of any kind of altercation or, you know, um, yeah, he's happy to call out anyone, and you got this kind of whoever went in the highest rank, the big chief, and he's this short guy, and he's kind of got a bit of a complex, and he's quite angry, and him and Ivan are going at it, and like I said, Ivan, like for an 18-year-old, the smartest guy you
18.
ever know. Yeah, and he's just going back and forth with this guy, and I'm just like, holy shit, man. This like, because that's not my thing. I was never a big like, but like I was fascinated by people that could just hold their own in this environment, right? Anyways, we got booted out of there, but the story I wanted to add is like I've had some really interesting times up on those border peaks. Like some of my closest to death experiences, and very like, they're cool mountain sharp peaks and nothing crazy climbing. But I went up there solo in the winter, a few years later, maybe a year later. Anyways, I was camped out in a bivvy up there. It's really cold. And I was kind of on this like shoulder, right? And it was kind of in between the two peaks, and it was like a big snow field. And it would have been like -15. And yeah, I was tucked in, but I went to go take a leak at night. And it was a beautiful night, like crystal clear, stars. But this like little place I was on, I had like climbing boots, how they have the liners, and I was kind of like
Yeah.
using those to like walk around. They have zero traction, right?
Grip. Yeah.
Zero grip. And whatever, I just wasn't paying attention, and I kind of lost, like I slipped a bit. And like this is like a snowfield that just shoots down like a good, probably drops off like a good 800 meters, right? And I slip and I drop to the ground like immediately, and just like go as wide as I can, like Spider-Man, because like I was slipping, man. And it was because it was night, and you're just like, you don't have your wits about you really yet because you kind of got up in the middle of the night and like again, that's just like a little side story, but like that could have been it. That could have been that story of that guy, you know, that just those random things that happen, right? You do a lot of crazy shit in a lifetime, but it's the stupid random thing that gets you, right? And that years later, when we moved back from Andorra, I went up. I was doing all these missions because like I'd go at like 3 in the morning, and I could get like a full on like proper day in, and be back for Gunner to do some activities and kind of do like the rest of the afternoon shift. Like, anyways, so I was doing all these missions, and I go up super early up on the border peaks. Beautiful day, kind of a spring day. And as I was going up, it was like warming up. And I was like, oh, this will be perfect because it's going to have just a nice little spring layer on top. I'll be able to rip back down. Boom. Day done. Probably start to get pretty warm, right? And anyways, I get up, I start skiing down, and I go to cross over. And I hit this area that had been still not exposed to any warmth. Like it was just kind of like, you know how sometimes you drop into like a little drainage or gully and it'll just be like a totally different temperature. And it wasn't getting any of that powerful sun just yet. And I'm not kidding you, it was like so steep, right? And ice like thick, but like just pure ice, like rock hard ice. And huge, like a huge runoff down, right? And I was just like, again, just thinking everything's fine and dandy, kind of like cruising. Like it was a little hard in places and little, you know, I was having to edge a bit, but it was all doable and fun, right? And then I hit this section, I'm like ripping across because I was like carrying some speed to kind of traverse. And it seriously is like a rink of ice, but like with vert. And I go down and it was just like, I was like, oh yeah, this could be it, you know? And, you know, I got through. I ended up like hooking up, like it softened again, like in a little area where I could like stop, you know, and like kind of keep traversing. But anyways, the point is like that place is funny for me because I've had all these wild experiences just on that mountain, right? Like just funny, yeah, funny stories that happen in a lifetime. So for some reason, those border peaks, they've drawn me back and then as well kind of shown me a few lessons in life, you know?
Oh man,
Yeah.
dude, it's insane. Like really. And I honestly think like people who even just like mountaineering would like you don't even have to like cycling. Like if you just want to hear like crazy stories in the mountains, that's what I was around. Like we haven't even got to any of the cycling stuff yet, and I've heard 5 stories I've never heard before. And then even
Yeah, I
when
mean,
you're retelling that,
that
when
was
you're
the goal
retelling
to
that,
kind of,
I'm just like parts of that story have been mixed into other stories that I've heard about you from other people, like how these stories just bleed, like it really is like a legend. And you just hear all the stories because for sure you told some of these stories to someone in a hotel room in France, and
yeah,
then it makes
yeah,
it back to America, and then it gets changed around. It's like, it's
yeah.
incredible.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, our goal was yeah, it is a cycling book because that's what I did mostly. But I love when I hear from people who aren't from cycling that have read it and enjoy it, you know. That was the goal. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's the title again? How do people get it if they want to get the book?
Yes, We Will Never Be Here Again. It's on Amazon. You like if you're in North America, I think yeah, you can get it in Europe too in Amazon. But yeah, North America, 7Mesh sells it on their site, so 7mesh.com, and then beachy.cc, Beachy Coletta, which is a big shop there in Vancouver. You can get it there online, and it's all over. With 7Mesh, it's like US and Canada, and then with Beachy, it's Canada wide, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. We Will Never Be Here Again by Svein Tuft.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Is there anything else you want to add to the podcast?
Well, I think we've covered a lot. I think guys like us could keep talking all day. So I would say we'll leave it for another time, you know?
Okay. Cool, man. Awesome.
Hopefully
Here.
people enjoy it, enjoy the tangents and all the jumping around. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, I hope somebody's out suffering on the bike right now and this helped kill a few hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, we'll end the recording.
That's it, guys. I hope you loved that one. I could talk forever with Swain, and I was so fortunate he came into my life and was a huge mentor for me. I got very lucky with him. So I hope you liked the episode, and if you did, I hope you share it and help someone else find it. That's it. Just share the episode if you like it.